In its later years, the original Transformers toy line experimented with a lot of different gimmicks to try and remain fresh and innovative. From the transforming heads and weapons of the Headmasters and Target Masters, to the armoured shells of the Pretenders, to the micro-sized Micromasters. But it was in 1990, the toy line's final year in America, that it introduced one of its wildest and most controversial new types of figure yet. These are the basics on the Transformers toys that didn't transform. The Action Masters.
Who will join me? Who will give up the power to transform to become stronger, faster, more alive? I will! Count me in!
And so, Action Masters are born.
Action is alive!
Action Masters were an attempt to introduce a more traditional action figure play pattern to the Transformers toy line. Non-transforming 3 3/4 inch tall figures, which came with transforming weapons and vehicles. Carded figures came with either a piece of equipment, like a jetpack or a skateboard, or a small partner robot in the form of either a blocky droid or an animal, which all transformed via a spring-loaded mechanism into a large weapon the toy could wield. While boxed figures came with vehicles the toys could ride, which converted into battle stations or from one kind of vehicle into another. The line was made up of a mixture of brand new characters and new figures of classic characters from the earlier years of the franchise. Hasbro had only tried out this idea of new toys for old characters a small number of times before, but for the Action Master line, it was implemented on a large scale to appeal to the nostalgia of older kids, with the toys even drawing partial inspiration from the characters' appearances in the original cartoon. In addition to the now traditional profile and tech spec stats, the toy's packaging also included power plans, technical readouts that highlighted the character's mechanical components and abilities. Marvel Comics writer Bob Budiansky was commissioned to come up with a story that would provide an in-universe explanation for why these new Transformers couldn't transform. Printed on the toy's packaging, it detailed how the Autobots discovered a new, highly concentrated form of energy known as nucleon within a black hole. The nucleon supercharged the Autobots, but it also fused their transformation systems, turning them into energy storage reactors, which left the Autobots unable to transform, and prompted them to create transforming partners and vehicles for themselves to compensate for the loss. No match for the nucleon-empowered Autobots, the Decepticons stole some of the fuel and used it to become Action Masters as well. When the time came to introduce the Action Masters into the Marvel comic book, however, writer Simon Furman told the story a little differently. In the comics version of events, nucleon was discovered by scientists on the planet Hydrus 4, who deemed it too dangerous to use due to the varied and unpredictable side effects it had on mechanical life, affecting different types of mechanoid in different ways. Determined to use nucleon to restore the many Autobots who had been taken offline over the years, Dinobot leader Grimlock journeyed to Hydrus 4 and tested the fuel on himself. When he didn't experience any ill effects right away, he assumed it was safe and used it to revive the other Autobots. But before long, the nucleon took effect, mutating his body and robbing him of the ability to transform. Now, the comic didn't get much further into introducing Action Masters, as it was cancelled just a few issues later. A few of the new characters created for the toy line made tiny cameos during this time. Decepticon foot soldier Croc got a slightly more substantial role than most as right-hand man to his leader Bludgeon. And Optimus Prime was rebuilt into the form of his new Action Master toy, but nobody else explicitly lost the power to transform before the comic came to an end. However, an epilogue story published in the United Kingdom's version of the series showed how most of the nucleon-empowered Transformers became unable to transform, and followed Grimlock as he returned to Hydrus 4 to seek a cure. Had the series continued, Furman had planned to explore some of the other side effects that nucleon would have had on the Transformers, and he would later get the chance to tell that story in the comic's 2012 sequel, Regeneration 1. which told an alternate version of Grimlock's quest for a cure, and showed how Nucleon had driven various bots insane, caused them to lose control of their bodies, or given them strange new powers. Though 1990 marked the end of the original toy line in America, it would continue for a few more years in other countries. Hasbro's Japanese partner Takara didn't release the Action Masters in their markets at all, but Hasbro doubled down on the gimmick in Europe and Australasia, releasing an exclusive second assortment of Action Masters in those markets in 1991. Which all came with partners and vehicles that transformed into armour for the figures to wear, the largest taking the form of battery-powered, motorised exosuits. Also released this year were the Action Master Elites, figures with built-in push-button gimmicks, who, strangely, were able to transform. Exactly what the story behind these guys was never explained. Now, it's important to stress that Action Masters weren't just some spin-off or line of tie-in merchandise. They were the main Transformers toy line for 1990, and that's a big part of the reason that, historically speaking, they don't have the greatest reputation with fans. The decision to abandon the central gimmick of the franchise was widely unpopular, and the fact that the American toy line ended after their release has often led to them being blamed for killing the series. As time has passed, though, many fans have come to look back on Action Masters fondly, and whatever their reputation, it's not to say that they haven't had an impact on Transformers lore. Many of the original characters created for the series have received new, fully transforming toys over the years, and basically all of them have been featured in modern media to some extent, mostly in comics and prose stories from IDW Publishing and Fun Publications. Nucleon, meanwhile, is also often mentioned in new stories, but today it's usually just treated as a very powerful fuel, which can be so intoxicating for Transformers that it's often used like a drug or alcohol. Its ability to inhibit transforming doesn't come up very often. Prominent appearances of the fuel have included the UK's tie-in live-action movie comic, in which the Autobots recovered it from Cybertron in the hope it could undo damage done to the Earth by the Decepticons, and IDW's comics, in which Megatron mined the fuel on the planet Mesatine in his youth. IDW's comics have also been the only series to really revisit the concept of non-transforming Transformers in any major way. The 2012 series More Than Meets the Eye reimagined the idea so that it didn't involve Nucleon, introducing monoformers, Cybertronians who chose to remove their transformation cogs for religious, political, or medical reasons. A more traditional version of the idea was recently featured in IDW's current Transformers series. Here, the crew of the starship Iron Hope all lost the ability to transform after they crashed on another planet and were forced to fuel themselves with Nucleon in order to survive. But while non-transforming Transformers have had only very limited exposure in media, in terms of toys, both Hasbro and Takara have actually experimented with many new lines of non-converting action figures in the 21st century. Just a few examples include the Heroes of Cybertron PVC figurines, the live-action movies Robot Replicas series, the cutesy super-deformed Robot Heroes and Tiny Titans, high-end anime-style figures from Reveltech and Flame Toys, the simplified, oversized Titan Heroes from lines like Transformers Prime and Robots in Disguise, and most recently, the new Transformers Red toy line, styled after Marvel Legends and the Star Wars Black series. But they've always been wise enough to make these their own separate spin-off lines, adjuncts to the regular ongoing Transformers toy line rather than replacements for it the way Action Masters were. Action Masters represent a bold, experimental, but ultimately unsuccessful moment in Transformers history, of a strange and daring kind we're not likely to see again soon. But we'll always have our memories to make us feel stronger, faster, more alive. And those are the basics on Action Masters. Do you have any fond memories of these toys? Any favourite characters? Leave a comment below. For more Transformers history and lore, don't forget to like and subscribe, and get early access to new episodes by supporting the series on Patreon.